Hey guys, good to see you again. The uh, the episode 19 is about ready to start here, and I have to apologize right up front because there's a couple of sound issues with this one. The first clip is I'm wearing a headset, but either it's not on or I'm not on or something's not on. So there's some sound issues in the first clip. You can hear me, but it's almost like I have to turn the volume up when I'm previewing it. So, but in any event, this episode 19 is just basically a general discussion of the open projects, where I'm at this point, what all I'm working on, and that kind of thing. And then I do take in the second clip, I take a good look at the shop, kind of show you guys around with what I'm working with. It's not the most extravagant thing in the world, but it goes to show you what you can do, when you're at your place, and kind of what I have and what I use to work with. And then toward the end here, I included it. I kind of debated, but just a little bit of analysis on this old 331 Hemi, and some diagnosis on the since I'm into the cylinder heads, some diagnosis of the valves and in the life of the Hemi. It's not a super long excerpt, but it kind of takes a look at my interpretation of what may or may not have happened to this engine. In any event, take a look, like, subscribe, um, ring the bell, and share this. Please share it. I'd like the comments. I make decisions and choices. I like the criticisms. I make decisions and choices. I get the opportunity to choose, obviously, on my build, as you do on yours. But if you like what you see, let me know. Anyway, let's get into it. Thanks a lot, guys, and enjoy it. Hello again, everybody. Sitting out here in the shop, and thought I'd just take a quick video to show you a little bit about what it looks like in here. You've probably seen the background several times over the course of the various videos, but the one thing is for certain is that I have mess. But what I have going on is a lot of kind of different things, pockets of workstations, if you will, throughout the shop, because of the nature of the flow of events. I want to keep going. So what winds up happening is I start something. It's called the squirrel syndrome. I want to start something, get it going to as far as I can take it until I need to order a part, or I come to I have to design something, or I come to a hard stop, and then I move on to the next thing. So in essence, there's several projects going on, and I'm going to touch base on them a little bit here. You remember the bell housing and the torque converter, the crank adapter, and then eventually the adapter for the top of the back of the transmission, the back of the bell housing, where the transmission will mount. That adapter I'm waiting on. Once I receive that adapter, I will put the transmission case on. That's right here. I'll mount that onto this, put the tail shaft on it, put a cylinder head, or probably both cylinder heads on, mount the headers on, and take that carcass and put it into the chassis. And that will help me locate my engine mounts, my transmission mount, those kinds of things. But that, I'm waiting on that adapter. That's fine. There's other things to do. With regard to the cylinder heads, I mentioned it in an earlier video. They're sitting right there on the bench. They've been ported. Realistically, they've been port matched, cleaned up, and polished. They haven't been port matched. They've been port matched, staged, cleaned up, and polished in the bowls and the runners, with exception to the exhaust side. with exception to the intake side. I'm sorry, it's early. On the exhaust side, the adapter, transition adapters will mount, 3/8 plate will mount between the cylinder head and the header, chamfer those out to the header radius. And again, the header flange, the header gaskets and headers for this head, the availability is for the 392, the later style cylinder heads, 354, 392 cylinder heads. And the result for that is that the opening in the header, the tube and gasket would allow for a leak. So I want to bring that out. A lot of people will think, why did you use those 333 heads, the early style 51 to 53 Hemi heads? And the answer is really quite simple. They're good heads. They're not heads for making 600-700 horsepower. They're not heads for making 500 horsepower. They don't have the flow characteristics of the other Hemis. They have good flow characteristics for what they are. But I'm looking at a 300, 310, 320 horse engine, good strong torque range from idle to say 45, 100 to 50 to 5,000 RPM, and a nice, strong, good sounding, nostalgic engine that runs really well. As I speak today, the concept is to be able to take a 2000, 2001, I'd say 98 to 2002 PCM, power control module from a Dodge truck, 5.2, and design my own fuel rails, but put together a Magnum type fuel control system on this engine, including the electronic distributor and all of that. I've got the 46RE transmission, which is an electronic shift. So I do want to go with a port fuel injected intake manifold, which I will have to build, I will have to fabricate. The O2 sensors, throttle position sensor, all that stuff, to make it a very smooth running, nice sounding, beautiful looking little hot rod. So that's where that's at. Those cylinder heads, I know I bounce around a lot, it's how my brain works, but the cylinder heads will go out and get machined, the valves, so on and so forth, cleaned up, all of that taken care of. I will do the build out on it, but the machine, I need a machine shop. I don't have the equipment to do a lot of that type of work. So I rely on some good friends at a machine shop that builds race engines for dirt track. So as those two things are in process and kind of trying to narrow up and line up the different elements of that timeline, I'm working with another individual on the frame. He's doing all the AutoCAD work. I'm giving him all the dims on the frame, and you can see, try to get a little better shot of it. You can see the chassis sitting here on a couple of stands. The chassis is done, it's boxed, as you know. Runs through the X-frame, and everything is in prime right now. Waiting to be sanded off on the sides to receive the Mustang 2 type front suspension and 9-inch Ford 4-link triangulated 4-link rear suspension. We went through a lot of things together. This is the first experience for this gentleman sells these kits, but for most of the popular vehicles. So what our arrangement was that I would give him the dimensions, all of the setup related information, where I wanted my caster, how I wanted my instant center on my rear suspension, where I wanted that to be, where I wanted those links to end, on the rear suspension, what type of shocks, what type of springs, you know, that basic stuff, the ride height, all of that. I provided that to him following the modifications, like the channeling of this, or rather the boxing of this frame, changed the dimensions because I put 3/16 material or 7-gauge material on the interior side, and it changed the inside dimension. But turns out he didn't have anything for this particular chassis in his files because he'd never done one of these. So as I work with him on that, the latest and greatest information as of yesterday is that he is finalizing the drawings for the rear suspension. The front is done, and he's ready to send the custom pieces to his laser shop that he uses to do the laser cutting. He's got a little bit of welding to do because most of this stuff is on the shelf, other than the brackets and a few cuts for the frame within that. And then he welds that out and then sends it over to me as like the front will be a kit, the rear, you know, is a pretty common kit. It's a sourced. The links are sourced, all of that kind of stuff. The tubes he cuts to length, welds the threaded ends on, thread plugs on the ends, and all of that kind of thing. But that should be shipping within a week or so. To me, it'll come in various pieces because some of the stuff comes direct from the manufacturer or from the supplier, and of course some of it he's doing some fabrication on for me. So when all that comes in, then I shift all resources. See these things, the engine and the cylinder heads, they're all getting, you know, the cylinder heads are all getting love attached to them. I'm getting that plate in to put the transmission on, and parts for this are starting to sprinkle in. Okay, so I just keep on flowing and start that mirror just starting to occur here. Cylinder heads will come back. I'll bolt bolts onto the engine. Have the transmission stacked onto the engine. I'll have the put the oil pan on the engine. I'll have the components to begin installing that into the chassis after I have the front suspension on, so that I know where any interference is for steering, for oil pan clearance, those kinds of things. In the far back, right there's a table. You can see that's by the garage door. That is holding all of the guts of the transmission. Keep it back there so it doesn't get any grinding dust. Most of the components are covered except for the stuff that I've recently been working on. I'll walk over there every once and again, and I will before I leave today to cover that front and rear forward clutch up that's sitting out there, because I just noticed it right now when I walked in. But I'll get everything covered up so that as I continue to work, and if there's any grinding or any sanding or anything like that going on, that I'm not contaminating. But that's all. This is kind of the bay, if you will, that has all of the current open workstations. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 workstations right now that are involved in the construction of this. Over on the other side of the shop, so that goes behind those weld curtains is my, well, you can start to see sorry about that. That's a 37 that I built a few years ago. And I hit a deer with it, so along the front grill you can see there's primer on there. I have to do a little bit more work on that. That car, that's a fun ride. It's got 17-inch wide rims. The widest, fattest tire that you can get, 22.5 inches wide. Was an old dually 1.5 ton Dodge. You can see on the far side of that is the lathe. It's an old, very, very, very old 1926 that I got from my father. I did some work to it. I fabbed up a cover for the gears and a cover for the motor pulley, and I went through the entire lathe and stripped it all down, cleaned it all up, and got her back in. She's not a 5/10 thousandths type lathe, but it does help me turn out bushings and discs and things of that nature. Then over here, I failed the grinder. I got my new grinder installed, much better grinder, but it's sitting on top of my plasma table. And so that table is used to cut with a just a hand operated plasma. It's used to, I make patterns out of wood or freehand, and I cut on this table. Basically, it's got slats in it, and I use it quite regularly. Comes in very handy. You get an old Shopsmith drill press. You know how those tear down into a lathe and all that stuff, but I got a drill press with a XY table on it. Works well for what I do. Got the office. In the office is my 57 Isetta. And this is where the creation and the drafting and those kinds of things happen. So that's a quick tour, but that's a look at where I'm at today and kind of how I do it. I guess, yeah, more later. Have a good one. Hello again. Well, what happened? What happened in the last, I don't know, 24 hours? Don't know why I have some energy, but I want to get a few of these videos done. That's my stand from yesterday's video. Probably should move it. This is my scissors that I used to open my package. So basically from Hot Heads, I received some hardened valve seats, some intake valves, intake guides, exhaust guides. That's what I got. And then stuffing, and then down into here. The top spring cup. And the intake and exhaust keepers. That's all correct. These are correct for the head. These are incorrect. You don't get two sets of intake valves. Those are incorrect, and the hardened seats are incorrect. So I got the intake valves. I need to get the correct exhaust valves and the correct exhaust valve seats. I'm going to go to the machine shop and ask them if the seats in here all look good. I was going to replace them just for the sake of making sure that everything was done. I'm venturing a guess based on the conversations when I placed the order. They said, we'll see if we have them in stock. They shipped those, even though we had correspondence going back and forth regarding the same. Those are exhaust seats, but they're for a larger exhaust valve than this head has. So I'm going to verify with the machine shop that the seats in here are usable. From what I see, they are. I don't want too much valve recession, and I certainly want valve seal. So that's something that we'll have to address
as I prepare for, plan for the worst, hope for the best. I'm planning on hoping for the best, so I've got to plan the worst. So I want to talk to the machine shop in the event that I cannot get those. And Hotheads isn't the only source for these. Obviously, I can go with a different style of exhaust seat so long as it fits the diameter of my 1.5 inch exhaust valves. Oh, I got a head sitting up right here. I'm going to flip the light on. So the issue winds up being these all look good. But if the decision is to replace them, I don't like how low they're set in there. I mean, they're not that low, but I just don't like how that looks. Anyway, if I can replace them with another seat, and then but I have to make sure I'm at or above this OD and at or above the depth of this seat for properly machining them into the head, machining them and inserting them into the head. So I think it's prudent right now to talk to the experience about their perception of what is and what is not, and then proceed. Obviously, if I can get them, I'm going to replace them. If I can get the factory replacements, I can get them. I've measured the diameter. Don't recall any of that stuff right now. Verified that these are actually, this engine was never rebuilt, but verified that they are actually the hardened seats for the industrial Hemi engine, and likely the originals. Okay, so why was this taken out of service? So I decided, a lot of things go through your head, right? You get the wrong valves. Am I going to get the right ones? They're a stock item. Should be able to. So I decided I'm going to clean and investigate. And what we can see here, that valve has no marking detail on it. This one does. This indicates to me, and a lot of them don't have marking detail on them. I began to clean them off, but there's another one that does. You can see the stampings on it. Does not. Does not. Does not. Does not. And does. Okay? So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 valves that do not have any additional stampings or identification marking detail on them. So one can venture a guess that either there were 2 or more valve replacements during the life of this engine. There was 1 valve replacement during the life of this engine. As an industrial commercial, if it was used for a generator or a water pump, anything of that nature, it ran at relatively the same RPM year over year over year. It's carbureted. Whether it was propane, natural gas, or regular gasoline, I don't know. That story's to be told, or some sort of chemistry that I'm not going to do could occur. But what I can tell you is, after looking at these valves, and remember this engine sat, but after looking at them, come on, you can see this valve burned. This valve, I cleaned the top. Focus, please. Not so bad. That's clean, that's clean. No damage. Burn. Burn. That one's okay. That one I cleaned the bottom. Did I already do this one? One, two, three, four, five. 5 valves that that appear to be in good condition. This one has corrosion, but that could be from the life. So what we have is a condition where one good valve, 5 good valves, of which one marking detail and marking detail, of which one of the 5 burn valves, this one right here, pardon me, one of the 5 burn valves was part of the lot of those with marking detail. 2, I said of the 5, of the 3 burned valves, 2 of the 3 burned valves were from the non-marked detail. And so did they have a burning valve condition over the life of the engine, where the replacement's involved? And not that this in particular investigation is worthy of anything significant, but it leads me to say, hey, I wanna probably address these seats. I wanna bring them back to new. Certainly the cast iron is in good shape, but if I can understand and appreciate what the hell's going on over here. Also noteworthy is this is one of the reasons for failure. You can see this did actually bounce around, and there are chips and marks and damage all the way around this valve. And part of that would be, it could have broke during removal, but it's not damage. That's just rust on the intake. And again, on the intake, this was in the box from when I had them hot tanked. That's a small block Chevy valve or a Ford valve. But in this lot, everything actually looks good. This valve hung open. That was the deal. I bet you the cam was up on this lobe, as it was sitting for a long period of time, and basically corroded up the valve. And then when they came to pull it out during the hot tanking, it broke. So anyway, on the intake valves, I can see all of them. Every one of them has marking detail. So clearly, because there were 2 different types of valves on the exhaust, 2 different production methods, one with stamping, one without. All of the intake valves have marking detail on them. You can see the lettering. And I could clean them, but I can see the lettering on all of them. And so it's likely that they all came with marking detail on the valves, and the replacement valves did not have that marking detail on them. Conversely, this thing could have had new intake valves put in it as well. The thing is, the bore is standard, the crank is standard. There hasn't been any oversizing in that manner. There could have been bearing replacements and ring replacements and things of that nature, but in the case of what I see here, there were burning exhaust valves that ended the life of service for the engine. Now the question is, and does it really matter? And the other fact is that those valves are visually different than these valves from the point of manufacture. So there was an activity on here, some form of repair or something of that nature, and that the engine failed on on as a result of burned exhaust valves. And then lastly, that the engine is an industrial commercial. So relatively constant RPM, unless fiddled. You never know what's going on, but basically most of its life it ran at 24, 25 governed engine RPM, and based on the fact that the engine is standard, that there was a ongoing fuel related condition, likely the transition to unleaded gas that burned exhaust valves, but that's an assumption. Anyway, just a little tidbit. These are the original springs that came off of the head, and the original keepers and all that stuff, and hats, spring hats. But the springs come with the cam kit and all that. I'm not going to reuse those springs, but when I get the rebuild kit, that's when I'll do that massive order for final assembly. So just a little tidbit today on the fact that came in, gave me the opportunity to investigate, make a few decisions on what I do, identify the fact that I can't get cracking on getting these heads rebuilt because I've got another journey regarding the getting the correct parts, which then leads itself to making sure that I can identify with whether or not I can get seats or not. Go ahead and plan for the best, or plan for the worst, hope for the best. Go and identify whether or not these seats are viable. These hardened seats are viable on the exhaust side, and get confident. Get confident with the fact that I can move forward. So keep all the balls in the air, but keep on forging ahead. Good day.